Hello, fellow humans. Sam here. And 2021 was kind of a year. And I think now is a good time to reflect on those wonderful reads from last year. I want to go out in 2021 in a positive note. I did have a couple of kind of crummy reads from the year, but I don't really want to address them. I'm sure that they'll creep up throughout the year at some point when I'll complain about them or whatever, but I want to just leave all that behind and we'll just talk about the best of the best from 2021 and start 2022 off on a positive note. Yeah. I have 12 here because I didn't really do much for reviews in 2021. I decided that I would just opt up for one book kind of per month. Not really, but it's almost one book per month. There is an overarching theme with all of the books on my list. It wasn't until 2020 when I realized that the one thing that I absolutely love in books is a great narrative voice. And all of these books were books that excelled at that. Either it was through great dialogue or excellent delivery of material, or it was something about the author's writing that really stood out to me. It made it special. So all of the books on this list are top-notch. They're not in any particular order with exception to the top 5, which are an official top 5, and the books 6 through 12 can be interchanged in every which way, but I have categorized them so that they kind of go together with exception to these first two. We're going to start at the top of my list, and this is my number 12 pick, The Prophets, and I absolutely love this book. I was a little disappointed that it didn't win the National Book Award, but it's fine. It won me over with a really fantastic ending. So I know a lot of people don't get along with this book because it has a lot of biblical themes and there's a lot of stuff, even things I know went over my head because I didn't really look into people's namesakes and things like that, but it's a little bit dense, but I feel like the payout at the end was really well deserved and greatly rewarded in the end. I absolutely loved this. Is one of the best last lines. I was almost disappointed because you reach that last line and then there's a poem called The New Covenant, and I thought, oh no, you're gonna ruin that great ending, but no, it continues to be a great ending. Best ending, period, that I've read in a very long time, and it was most certainly the best of 2021, whatever year that is. Coming in at number 11, this is a book that was chosen by me by a wheel of chance as the BookTube spin. And that's The Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And this book excels at great dialogue. It is a nonfiction, but it doesn't read as one. And that's what really won me over in the end, but also it's got great characters. It has great character. This shouldn't have characters, and it doesn't, but it does. It's nonfiction, but it reads as a novel, and it's incredibly entertaining, and I highly recommend this. If you haven't given it a shot yet, I did years and years and years ago, so I was so pleasantly surprised how much I absolutely loved it. I put it down in like 2006 or 2007-ish era, and I had it just sitting on my back burner list for ages, and I'm thrilled to pieces. It ended up here. The next two books on my list are actually nonfiction pieces that were read as a result of the BookTube prize, and these were my favorites. At number 10 is Fathoms. This is about Rebecca's encounter with a humpback. I think it was a humpback whale. I think it was a humpback whale, and he's beached off of the coast of in Australia, an Australian coast, somewhere in Australia. But anyway, she keeps referring back to this whale and his slow death, and it interspliced with events that happened in her life in relation to whales. It shows you so much about how we are all interconnected with all species, but especially the whale. And it was so warming and beautiful. And I absolutely love this. Pick it up. Number 9 is another book that I read for the BookTube prize. And early on, I knew it was going to make it pretty far. In fact, it kind of won the entire nonfiction category, and that's Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. I was on a huge wait list for this book for ages. I actually was on the wait list back in 2020, so I was greatly anticipating to read this book. I had no idea that it was going to have such a powerful voice. Every single word and every single thought is very carefully crafted in this book. All of the essays that are combined to create a great, I want to call it an argument, but she's not really creating an argument. She's just stating a fact that we have a problem with the caste system. It extends beyond the US, but in no way does she ever use the words racism or race to really discuss that. It's a system and it needs to be abolished, but she goes on to show you very elegant little details about how it's used and how it can be disassembled. Absolutely recommend this if you have not read it yet. It is fantastic. I have to keep pausing so that I can count because I don't know my numbers backwards when I'm talking too. So number 8 is actually a controversial pick. It was a book that I picked up as a result of the BookTube prize as well. Very controversial because, you know, the author's the best person in the world. This really was something that embedded itself in me. It follows 2 men, Bassam and Rami, and they both have some things in common. One is from Palestine and one is Israeli, and they both wanted to see the end of the occupation. And that's what kind of brought them together, but what they're joined by is the deaths of their daughters as a result of conflict. And in a Paragon, actually, I have the actual, it's here, a Paragon, a shape with countably infinite number of sides. And the book actually examines their lives and their daughters' lives and all of these events in every which way, every which angle, going backwards and forwards. It's gutting. It's had me feeling so sad many times, many tears shed. It moved me. I can't help that. I know maybe the author is trash. I can't help but love this book, and it deserved a spot on my list. So my number 7 pick was one I don't have a physical copy of, so I just stuck a notebook here. But it's the only book I don't have a physical copy of, and that's The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. This didn't make it to the finals in the BookTube prize, and I mean, I'm sad it didn't win, but I'm also sad that this book is not here with me right now. And I would get sad every time I would approach one of Ben's chapters. I would literally, like, could feel the tears welling up. His chapters were beyond. They're beyond. It's just something about his character that just made that book. But this does deal with AIDS and how people treated, not even just gay people, but people with AIDS as lepers, and how they were mistreated, and how he was cast as a misfit, and how no one wanted to deal with him, and including his family, who some people in the family wanted to get closer, but at the same time they wanted to keep their distance because, you know, they got a reputation. It's really difficult to read, especially if you grew up in that era and you know that being gay was used as a slang. So there was a sense of guilt that I had reading this book. It was one, when I was voting for the final round, this was between this and Shuggie Bain for me. And I'm glad this made it to I think it was number 2. I think it got silver. It might have been bronze, but anyway, go read it. It'll break your heart. Number 6. Of course this book has to be here. It won the friggin' Booger, and I absolutely adored it because it has the most fascinating narrative voice of all the books in this list. It's like being a ghost. Like, you're this third person narrator, but then suddenly it's talking to you. The story's talking to you. It is phenomenal, and it's just the most bizarre point of view of any of the books that I have on this list. So yeah, it's gotta be here, and it's my number 6. Now, as I said, my last 5 on my list are definitely in a pecking order of, like, these are the order of the books. These are my top 5 picks. And of course, the book that I wanted to win, that I personally wanted to win, I thought that the, what is it called? You know, the train book. I thought the train book was going to be chosen, but this is the book that I wanted to win the BookTube prize. This is the book that had me sobbing at my desk at work. Between this and the Shipstead book, both of those books, I read them around the same time, and at that time, the whole anti-abortion laws were being passed in the state of Texas, and then even in my state, there's a new abortion law, and it's not great. Nothing's great, but this is the book that wrecked me, and so it made number 5 on my list. It also was a book that I feel like most connected with in terms of sense of humor. So this was nominated for the National Book Award as well. It was longlisted, it didn't make the short list, but it's the Souvenir Museum. This is also a collection of short stories, which is really, that's crazy for it to end up on my list. I didn't do a 2020 best of list or favorites list last year. I just completely didn't have time for BookTube at the beginning of the year, and just, you know, give it up. But one of my favorite books was Here's Your Hat, What's Your Hurry by Elizabeth McCracken. I'll post this. That first story in that book is one of the best things I've ever read in my life. It was the most romantic. And in that and this, McCracken does this amazing thing where all of the stories, the short stories, are interconnected. In this book in particular, you're meeting all of the characters over and over again at different stages in their life, but they're so disconnected that, yes, they each read as their own little short stories, because this is just an event in their life, and this is how it turned out. It's amazing, and it's just like a powerful piece. I would say that I can't pick a favorite story. I guess the last one, just because it's really kind of sad, but the Souvenir Museum was something else. I mean, it was nominated for the National Book Award, so yeah, go read it. My number 3, this was probably going to be cast as my favorite book of all time, which means it would have toppled Space Opera by Kat Valente. And of course, there's only one book that could topple it, which is The Past is Red by Catherine M. Valente. I ended up I won't say that this is my favorite book of all time, because for one thing, I've got 2 more books on this list, and so this made number 3, and the reason being that I first read this book, as one can see all of my love notes here. This was sent to me after I requested it from Tor.com, and they sent me a finished copy, and they also sent me Comfort Me with Apples in its paper form, crappy form, in its uncorrected proof form. Anyway, I did eventually, there was a time when I was working and I was between books, and I thought, I'm in the mood for something that I know. And I figured this had just come out, and it was available on Hoopla on audiobook, and I listened to it, and I was not a fan of the audiobook. It reminded me of Bubbles telling you the story of climate change. It was really weird. It was just bizarre. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the audiobook on this one. I highly recommend it for space opera, but not so much for this. Ugh, I hate saying that, but other than that, the text, the narrative, and that's actually why I didn't like the audiobook, because the narrative voice didn't match that I thought it was. She felt like a much more confident and easygoing human, versus with the audiobook, she just sounded kind of like ditzy and like, I mean, she's nonchalant and whatever, like space case. It didn't really match the way that I read it. So yeah, but in terms of narrative voice, this is excellent. My number 2 pick was actually, for the most part, I was planning on making this my number 1 for ages. And I think I actually said that it was going to be my number 1 pick a couple of weeks ago. But I haven't stopped thinking about my number 1 pick since the beginning of the year. My number 2 pick, which was unfortunately dethroned as from the number 1 spot, is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Wenderson. I had no idea what to be getting into when this was chosen. This was actually chosen for me by the BookTube spin, and I had no clue what I was going into. I think I put this on my list. I bought it, and it was something that was recommended by Freddie over at the Sluggish Reader, and he absolutely loved it. I forgot what he'd said about it, but this is one of the funniest freaking books I've ever read. But it's still quite serious in content. But Jeanette Wenderson has this excellent delivery of this like ambivalent little innocence of a kid, even when she becomes an adult. And the main character is named Jeanette. It is possibly autofiction. It is possibly one of the greatest books I've ever read. So yeah, if you haven't, or you have any reservations, I know it's like, oh, it's about a missionary. It's like, it's amazing. It's hilarious. Just trust me on that. You will fall in love with Jeanette. And my number 1 pick was the one I could not stop thinking of, because of course it was the first friggin' book I finished at the beginning of the year. And Salt Waters by Jessica Andrews. And I know a lot of people reading this lately and talking about it because it is all about the delivery of the text. It's just every single word feels like it belongs, like she thought about every word and its placement. She made me feel so much love for my mom. I mean, everyone loves my mom, but I was never felt more grateful for my mom. And I just, this is like a Mother's Day book, but it's just the most beautiful book I have ever read. And I recommend this to no end. Like, just read it. You will love it. It just makes me feel so warm inside. This book is it's kind of a feel-good book, but it's also quite serious, because yes, it does deal with alcoholism and death of a grandfather, and it's about coming of age kind of stuff too, but it's not easy. But it also has, what is incredibly rare, is a character with a heart condition. It's just a little side character. I think it was her little brother, but yeah, that is incredibly rare in books. Let me tell you, I've looked. But anyway, I can't not ever recommend this book. And if it means getting people to read it, because I have to make it my number 1. I have to make it my number 1. It was the first book I read this year, and it will not be the last time I've read it. I will definitely pick this up again. I think this was originally recommended by Ange over at Ange's Book Chatter, and this was, of course, what she comped to Shuggie Bain. So if you love Shuggie Bain, you're absolutely going to love this. Absolutely beautiful. Such great writing. So, woo, there go my books. So that is it. Goodbye 2021. I cannot wait for the books that I will be reading in 2022. At the end, I ended up picking up 96 books, which matches the number of books that I read in 2020. And yeah, we'll see if I can either meet or beat that number this year. I really don't care. Either way, if you've read any of these books and you have recommendations based on my love for them, please leave any comments down below for book recs. I will consume them in 2022. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you around soon. Bye!